Hello, and thank you for joining us this evening. My name is Rigo Palacios, manager for the Office of Family Engagement with San Jose Unified School District. So thank you again for taking time to join us today. Tonight, we are providing an overview for parents about the state assessment system. Assessments occur throughout the year at various points to measure student growth and progress, and the springtime is when most state assessments are scheduled. So with that window approaching, we want to offer this webinar to provide information that we hope will support you and your child with the CASP state assessment. We are recording the webinar and we'll be sharing it with families before the end of the week. And for families who registered for the webinar, we will attempt to send that much sooner than everyone else. So look for that in your inbox very, very soon. So we'll go ahead and begin. We begin all of our webinars, our presentations kind of centering us around our district vision, which is preparing today's students to be the thinkers, leaders, and creators of tomorrow. And the Department of Family Engagement, we attempt to provide as much information to our families to support students in a variety of aspects. And we hope the information that we present tonight will provide a clear overview and understanding of what the state assessment system is, how it works, and we hope that that information will help you then support your children. The objectives for this evening, we are providing an overview of the state assessment system, and I'll explain what the CASP acronym stands for. We'll review some sample test items and spend a few moments understanding and discussing what the test results look like, how they're used, and then also provide some resources to help you support your child. So let's begin by becoming a little bit more familiar with the state assessment system, as it's known as CASP. So CASP stands for California Assessment of Student Performance and Progress. There have been several iterations of state testing over the years in California, dating back since I was in elementary school. Don't want to date myself, but it's that old. And CASP has been in place since 2014, aligning with the introduction of the Common Core state standards. And it included more rigorous assessments than previous iterations of the tests, which were mainly multiple choice. The CASP is not a single test. It is a statewide assessment system that includes tests in a variety of content areas, and it's taken annually by students in grades 3 through 9 and grade 11, and on occasion, 12th graders, and I'll get to that as we progress here in the presentation. It is a way for the state of California to assess student progress that is evaluated, reported, and made accessible to schools as well as to the public. So the purpose of the CASP system is that it is designed to provide a statewide measure of student progress in key academic areas such as reading, math, science, and a few others. It's important to keep in mind, however, that even though it is one indicator that we look at, there are other data considered by schools to determine student growth over time. So we don't focus on just the CASP. CASP results can be used, however, by schools and districts to set goals for the school year based on previous year's data. For example, if 50% of students demonstrate proficiency in reading, the school or district may set a growth target area that builds on that year's results. That can be by grade level, it might be by individual student, or it might be by a student subgroup, such as English learners or students with disabilities. And it can also help plan for how to further support students who did not meet the proficiency goal. The CASP assessment system is typically the benchmark used for end-of-year progress on the school plan for student achievement and for measuring actions taken towards advancing student achievement. Results can also help determine if the effectiveness of determine the effectiveness of a particular academic strategy or action. If a school implemented a program or initiative, for example, before or after school tutoring, the assessment results can indicate how much growth the participating students in the program made and can help decision makers with funding or implementing the following year. At the individual student level, performance on the CASP assessment will not impact a student's grades. It doesn't impact their GPA. It's not a requirement for promotion to the following grade or for graduation. However, previous scores may be considered for placement in courses at the beginning of the following school year, such as reading or math support classes for students who need some additional help, and for students seeking advanced math placement in middle school, or who may be working towards English language reclassification or the seal of biliteracy. Prior year CASP scores are one of the criteria used to determine eligibility in conjunction with other performance assessments and class performance. So again, I'll reiterate, it's not the only point looked at, but it is a point that may be considered. In the interest of time, I won't diverge to a full discussion on those placement opportunities, but I can provide my contact information at the end of the presentation. And if there are questions about those, I can add a few additional resources in the follow-up email that can help answer or clarify some of those questions. On a more macro level, results are included in the calculation of the California State Dashboard Reporting Tool. The dashboard is an online tool that helps parents and members of the public view the performance information of schools and districts in a variety of content areas, again, such as English language arts, science, and other areas. Its intended goal is to provide information for educators, for parents, and for the community so they can participate in discussions and decisions to help improve student learning in their schools. So this is a visual overview of the CASP system. It's always depicted in this form. So again, the system, itself is kind of we can think of it as an umbrella, and underneath that umbrella are the various assessments that students may be taking over the course of the springtime. So it's a system that includes several summative or end-of-year assessments for students across several grades and content areas. Included are the English language arts and mathematics summative assessments, also known as the Smarter Balanced Assessment Consortium, many times referred to as the SBAC assessments. These are the assessments taken by students in grades 3 through 9 and also grade 11, and include computer adaptive tests and performance tasks, and I'll explain what those are shortly. The California Science Test is also included in this battery. It is taken by students in grades 5 and 8, and in high school, it's taken in either grade 11 or 12. The high school will typically assign the science test to students after they've completed their final required science coursework. For most students, that happens in junior year, so that is when most of the high school students will take it. For students who are finishing up their required science coursework in their senior year, they will take the science test in senior year to make sure that everything that will be included on the assessment has already been covered through their instruction. The English language arts, math, and science tests also include alternative assessments, known as the California Alternative Assessment, and those are available for some students. And again, more information will be provided later in the presentation on how that might apply to some of our students. The California Spanish Assessment, also referred to as a CSA, is taken by students in grades 3 through 8 who are enrolled in the two-way bilingual immersion program to measure their proficiency in Spanish. And the physical fitness test is taken by students in grades 5, 7, and 9. Finally, the English language proficiency assessments for California, also referred to as the LPAC assessments, are taken by all students in grades K through 12 who are enrolled in California schools as English learners or students who are learning English as a second language in our schools. The physical fitness and English language development assessments may occur outside of the window that we'll be looking at shortly, and all others will occur within the identified time frame. So the testing window under or within which most of the assessments will occur opens on March 17th and runs through May 9th. Students will not be testing for the entire time frame. The various tests will be scheduled for the appropriate students by each school, and schools should be communicating their schedules to families. And the reason for the communication, besides informing you that students will be assessing, is that there may be modified schedules or special schedules taking place during that time to allow for longer uninterrupted periods of time for testing. Many schools schedule testing in the mornings when possible. Also, whenever possible, students will be assigned to test with the same content area teacher. For example, students, every attempt will be made for the students to take their English language arts assessment with their English language arts teacher, the math assessment with the math teacher, etc. And all assessments are computer-based, so they will be taking those on a district-provided Chromebook. And there are both computer adaptive tests and performance tasks that are included on the assessment. Computer adaptive testing is a customized experience for each student. During a test, the difficulty of questions in those computer adaptive tests change based on student responses, providing more precise information about student achievement in less time than a fixed form test in which all students see the same set of questions. The initial test question for all students is typically in the medium range of grade level difficulty. And then from there, the assessment will ensure a variety of questions from the grade level standards, adjusting to complexity based on responses. The performance tasks are composed of a set of questions centered on a common topic that measure various capacities, such as depth of understanding and more complex analysis. The Smarter Balance for English Language Arts and Math will include both computer adaptive tests and performance tasks in their battery of tests. And I do see a couple of questions in the chat. I will respond to those questions at the end just to ensure that I'm able to cover the content in the allotted time. So please bear with me. I appreciate your patience. What can students expect during the testing window? Again, they won't be testing for the entirety of that March through May window. Most schools should be able to complete their testing within a few weeks within that time frame. And even though there are modified schedules and students will work within designated testing blocks, they do have an unlimited amount of time for completing their assessments. If a student were to need more time at the end of a 90-minute or 2-hour testing block, they will be allowed to exit the test and come back to continue it at a later time. As an example, if the testing block happens right before lunch and it's lunchtime, we don't want to keep the students from eating, so they'll have the opportunity to pause their test and then continue it later in the day or at another date with a staff member. So students can exit the test, continue at a later time. Each school site has a testing coordinator that might be the principal, an assistant principal, or another designated staff member. And they will work with the classroom teachers for any students who don't complete within the time frame to identify the best time to have the student pulled from class and continue to complete the test. If students are absent during any portion of the test, they also will be allowed to make it up at a later time, as with any other classwork or school assessment. We do acknowledge and understand that absences may occur. Sometimes suddenly the student's not feeling well, or there might be a family emergency. But we do encourage families as much as possible to make appointments or schedule any appointments outside of the testing dates so that a student's day is not disrupted. When students are pulled from class to complete the assessment due to absences, they may miss other content areas and are sometimes less likely to focus in an alternate setting. One of the reasons also why we try to schedule students to take their assessment with the teacher who's taught that content so that they feel a little bit more comfortable in that setting. And sometimes pulling them to an alternate setting for a makeup with a teacher they don't know, with other students they don't know, perhaps mixed grade levels, may create a little bit of discomfort or, just might make it more challenging for them to focus. As with any other test, there are expectations around test security that students may already be familiar with, such as expecting students to work independently without the support of their peers or support of the teacher. The state of California, however, does have additional requirements for students and staff around the state assessments. So during the assessments, no electronic devices are allowed, such as cell phones or smartwatches, except for the laptop or Chromebook or device that they are assigned for the test. If a student needs a particular device for a medical condition, some students monitor their blood sugar, for example, using a device. Accommodations can be made in those situations. Students will also use a device that has a secure testing browser installed or accessible on the Chromebook, which won't allow them to navigate away from the test or open other browser windows during testing. Teachers will be taking time in class to have students practice logging into the testing system, the secure browser, finding the correct tests, and then also using some of the tools available to them during the assessments, which we will see here shortly. So now that we have a little bit of context about the assessment and what students can expect on the testing days, we'll take a look at some sample items. Due to time constraints, we can't review examples for all content areas in every single grade. So I selected a few content areas and a sampling of grades, and can provide links for you at the end to explore these items more in depth if you choose. So to begin, we have here an example of the fourth grade computer adaptive tests for English language arts. So in English language arts, students are assessed in various skills such as reading comprehension, they're assessed in vocabulary and also in writing. Students in this particular example will read a passage and answer the questions that they're provided. There may be, a few questions. This one seems to have about 8 or 9 questions for this particular passage. And in the particular question on the screen there, students are asked to select 2 details from the passage that support an inference from the reading. So they will select their best answers from those provided. They can reread the passage as many times as needed to complete the questions. Again, it is really an untimed test, even though they're testing within a particular time frame, but we don't want to add the pressure, of them needing to finish it within the time frame, so they can reread the passage as many times as they need to, answer the questions at their pace. They can always come back at the end to review their answers before submitting their final assessment when they are complete. All students will also have access to a toolbar with support tools such as a line reader. So if you look at the upper right-hand corner there above the numbers, there's a line reader that they can use. So if they select that line reader, they can highlight text as they're reading through the passage, so that way they don't skip a line. They also have a zoom in and zoom out button where they can make the text larger on the page if that helps them track it more successfully. And I can speak a little bit later in the presentation about additional tools that might be available for students who have other accommodations built into their IEPs or 504 plans. Teachers will monitor students as they work throughout the testing time. Will provide encouragement to do their best and to select the response even if they're unsure. It's better to at least take a guess than to leave a question blank. But they will not be able to support students with responses. Here's an example from a 7th grade English language arts this one is the performance task. So the performance task is a more complex task that will require students to apply multiple skills to respond to a problem. In this particular example, they are given instructions to read multiple sources of information. So we see on the left-hand side there with the text, there's a scroll bar. So they'll be scrolling for quite a bit there to read the multiple sources that they're provided. And their task will be to compare the sources of information and then cite their evidence. So they will use write an explanatory article on a topic related to the sources that they read for the second part of the performance task. Students will have access again to some of the tools that they had in the previous assessment, the line reader, the zoom in or out. They also have for this particular portion of the assessment a notes button, so they can click on the icon. A little window will pop up, a little notepad where they can take notes on the articles or the sources that they're provided as they read them, and that will help them then draft their explanatory article when they're ready to provide that their response. So they can use that to write their responses. This here is an example from a 5th grade math, the computer adaptive assessment. So the math assessment will assess them on various math skills such as operations, geometry, math reasoning, and others. In this sample, students are plotting the coordinates provided on the graph there. Here we have an example of an 8th grade math performance task. The students are provided a word problem / scenario, and then they use the information provided to respond to the questions. So they have 5 questions for this particular problem. They are asked to write an equation in this particular one that expresses the relationship between the height of the stack of cups and then the number of cups. There are 5 total questions for this part of the performance task, and they all will require students to demonstrate various math skills within each one. The science assessments will test students on their knowledge of scientific concepts up to the grade level of the assigned test. I mentioned earlier that most students will take it their junior year. Some may take it their senior year if they're finishing up their required science by that time. This particular example tests students on their knowledge of molecular reactions. At the top, students continue to have access to support tools to help them while they work. And on this test, the toolbar also provides a button for a periodic table and also for formulas, as well as some other tools that we have previously seen. Schools, again, will schedule this assessment during the year that the student is completing their science, the science knowledge required for the assessment. If they are, again, a junior, that will happen junior year. If it's happening during their senior year, that is when they will be taking the assessment. Here's an example from the California Spanish assessment. Again, this one will be taken by students in the dual immersion, the two-way bilingual immersion programs that we have in San Jose Unified in grades 3 through 8. It's very similar to the English language arts assessment. So they're assessing on reading comprehension, vocabulary, writing, but it is completely in Spanish. So in this particular example, the students will listen to an audio clip and then respond to the questions that are being provided to them. So that's a quick sampling of a few sample test items. Again, I'll share a link before we wrap up today where you can view additional test items if you choose. So I'd like to take a moment to discuss CASP and supports that students with an individualized education plan or IEP, or perhaps students who have a 504 plan can expect. So students in grades 3 through 12 may have testing accommodations written into their IEP that are applied on a daily basis with the daily instruction. And if that is the case, then the appropriate accommodations will also be provided during testing for students. For example, a student with a 504 or IEP may have an accommodation of testing in a small group instead of in the regular class with 20 to 25 other students. So students with IEPs may have accommodations where test questions are also read to them, or they may be allowed additional supports that are not available to other students. 504 plan and or IEP case managers will ensure that all students with these plans have the appropriate accommodations uploaded to the system prior to testing. So they'll work with the testing coordinator to make sure that those are in place. And that way students can practice using the additional tools available to them before they actually begin. So I mentioned earlier that teachers will soon begin having the students practice with the testing environment, the secure browser at that same time, or by that time. Students should also be aware of what the accommodations are that will be provided to them if they have a 504 or IEP, so they can practice that in addition to the general applications that all other students will be utilizing. If you are unsure what, if any, testing accommodations are included in your child's IEP or 504 plan, if they have one, you can review the latest copy of your child's plan. You can also contact your child's case manager, so reach out to the school so that can be reviewed with you. I mentioned earlier also that an alternate assessment exists for which some of our IEP students are eligible. The California Alternate Assessment is designed for students with significant cognitive disabilities, where the IEP team determines that the student will be unable to participate in the language arts, math, or science tests with only the identified supports and accommodations available to most other students. So only eligible students may participate in the alternate assessment, and again, that is determined by their IEP. The assessment is delivered one-on-one by a trained alternate assessment examiner familiar to the student. So if an IEP case manager determines that the alternate assessment is a better option for a student, it will be recommended in an IEP meeting, discussed, and if the IEP team is in agreement, then the recommendation can be made and the testing request will be included in the IEP so that the appropriate test is assigned to the student. In this particular example from the third grade alternate assessment, we can see that there is less overall text. There are colorful photographs to support the understanding of the topics and questions to which students will respond. And again, it will be, again, administered in a one-on-one setting with someone familiar to the student. If you are familiar with testing or you've heard of testing in schools, typically English language arts, math, science, and Spanish perhaps are typically the assessments that we hear most about. But the CASP system also includes a physical fitness test for grades 5, 7, and 9. The test is a comprehensive battery of health-related physical fitness tests for students in California. They're not, again, the assessments that are typically are typically discussed. We typically don't see state level reporting of these assessments. So again, it may not be as familiar, but it does include 5 parts to it where students demonstrate a level of fitness that offers a degree of defense against potential diseases caused by inactivity. The 5 fitness areas of the physical fitness test are aerobic capacity, which may involve running or walking exercises, abdominal strength and endurance, which may involve curl-ups, upper body strength and endurance, which may involve push-ups, trunk extensor strength and flexibility, which is assessed with a trunk lift, and then general flexibility, which will incorporate sit and reach and shoulder stretches. Fitness testing generally takes place during the student's regularly scheduled physical education time, so there won't be a modified schedule to accommodate this assessment, and the PE teacher, him or herself, will administer the assessment during that time. The final assessment that is included in the battery is the English Language Proficiency Assessments for California, or LPAC, as it is commonly referred to. And this assessment is used to measure the growth of English language development for students learning English as a second language in grades K through 12. It measures students' development in listening, speaking, reading, and writing. And the assessment is a combination of individual and group assessments. The LPAC administration began in February at most of our schools. And for a more detailed description of the LPAC, if you are interested, we invite you to view the English Learners webinar found in the Office of Family Engagement page of our district website. So after all assessments are completed in the spring, the state of California will provide individual score reports. Some individual CASP results are provided to schools as soon as the summertime. Others are delayed due to a variety of reasons, which may include hand scoring that occurs for portions of the test. But San Jose Unified will send out communication to families of students who assessed, including instructions for obtaining the reports when a majority of the score reports are available to us in our system. And that will be dependent on when they are received from the state of California. Performance reports are available by content area, performance reports by content area, by subgroup, and where schools and districts end up on the California dashboard is released later in the fall. Once scores have been uploaded to our San Jose Unified Student Information System, parents will receive instructions on how to access those reports, and those can all be found in the parent portal. Schools use this data point for goal setting for the following school year. However, once the school year begins, they do gather additional ongoing assessment results that will weigh more heavily on future instructional decisions. So the CASP results will give us a starting point. Once we get into the school year, however, since the CASP is from the previous spring, again, all of the day-to-day assessments, weekly assessments that they will have in the following school year will weigh more heavily and will be used primarily to determine decisions for how to support the students best. A way parents can use this data as a data point for the child's learning, can be again a point of point of progress. But we also always caution to weigh other assessments, work samples, teacher reports to really have a comprehensive report of learning progress for your students. Here's a sample of the CASP report that parents will have available to them in the parent portal. I only have a screen image here of the first 2 pages of the report, but it is a 4-page report intended to provide a Quick summary and overview of how your student performed. The 2 pages pictured here provide an overall score for English language arts and math, as well as a description of the score ranges from level 1 to 4, level 1 being standard not met, level 4 being standard exceeded. And the report also includes a score history for English language arts and math, so you can compare progress over the years. Obviously, if your student is taking the assessment for the first time this year as a third grader, there won't be a history, but starting in grade 4, you'll be able to view and compare that progress. The report also includes links. It is a PDF where you can review additional information about CASP, other information about understanding the score report, and other resources around CASP. So in addition to, again, the information from the school site with regards to the assessment windows and when that will occur at your school site, parents will also receive or may have already received, I'll have to confirm the date of that communication, will receive information from San Jose Unified directly regarding the upcoming CASP testing window. One of the items covered in that communication will explain a parent's right to opt out of the assessment and instructions for how to request an opt-out. We acknowledge and understand that there may be some circumstances where opting out may be in the best interest of the student, and parents definitely have the right to make that request, and it will be honored. There are some potential negative outcomes if a school district does not meet a minimum testing percentage of 95% of assessing 95% of our students. In short, school and district score percentages are penalized for not meeting the minimum target. If a student is opted out of CASP, they will be assigned alternate work to complete while their classmates complete the assessment, and that will typically take place in a different classroom where students are not testing at that time. The other thing to keep in mind is that CASP scores are included in as a part of the criteria used for determining placement or eligibility for certain courses or recognitions. So opting out may impact their eligibility. So we advise parents to please consult with your child's teacher or the school principal if you have questions on their eligibility based on that. Here's some resources that I will drop a link in the text box for. I won't go through and click on each of these. I'll let you explore them on your own, but there's some resources that you can use to learn more about the CASP assessment system or other resources that can support your child's learning. So there's a link to CASP practice tests where you can select the grade level and content area of your choosing if you want to explore those a little bit further. The CASP Starting Smarter is a simple website that provides an overview about CASP, and I believe you can also, it's got a few sample test questions that you can explore there as well, and some other information about the CASP assessment system. The parent guides are a 1 or 2 page document from the California Department of Education with an overview, again, of the CASP assessment system. The sample score reports will direct you to a website, I believe it's the CASP assessment website, where you can view sample score reports for in various languages, similar to the one that I showed earlier. And then the Understanding Score Reports video is a video from the CDE. It's about 10 or 11 minutes, I believe. And it's a walkthrough of the score reports, breaking down all the different areas of the score reports. The parent portal score report link will take you to a document that will show you how to access the scores in the parent portal. So if your child already has a history of CASP assessment, and there are a few other assessments that are housed in the parent portal as well, that will help you navigate through those and access those if you haven't done that before. And then the final link here is to the California State Dashboard, which is the state report card, so to speak, where you can look up a particular school or particular district to find out more about how the school or district has been progressing in a variety of areas, English language arts, math, chronic absenteeism, suspensions, and a few other data points that are tracked at the state level. So those, again, I will share in the chat here momentarily. Many times parents ask how else they might be able to support the student achievement, overall student performance on their assessments. The best way really that a student can prepare for the assessment is by maximizing their access to instruction and attending school regularly. Way back, in the when I started teaching in the early 2000s, there was a lot of discussion around the testing at that time, and teachers teaching to the test with the Common Core standards in 2014. I think we've kind of shifted away from that conversation. But really, the best way that a student can prepare is coming to school regularly, being there daily to access instruction on a day-to-day basis, in any of the content areas, to ensure that they are gaining mastery over the course of the year. We also encourage parents to stay informed about their child's progress, work with their child's teacher, stay in contact with them, request additional help when you see that they're struggling in a class, and then attending meetings or information nights such as this one, or any information sessions related to academic programs, curriculum, or other supports that your school may be providing. Again, we reiterate that there's no one single assessment tool that can tell us everything about a student's progress. So we encourage you again to keep the lines of communication open with your child's teacher, with your school, so that you know how they're performing with classwork, with tests and quizzes, school and district assessments, and then you'll begin to see a pattern that will provide you a strong indicator of their performance. Some of our ongoing school and district assessments that students are working with on a weekly or monthly basis, quarterly basis, correlate very well with performance on state assessments and can be a good indicator of CASP performance as well. So if they're doing fairly well on the reading assessments in elementary school, we have the CAASPP assessment where students' reading is assessed on a monthly basis. That is a pretty good indicator and correlates fairly well with performance on the CASP. The math assessment that many students take, the NWEA, which I believe is a quarterly math assessment, that also correlates very well with the math CASP performance. So again, those are a couple of ongoing assessments that you should have access to fairly easily. That can be a good indicator of how they might perform on the summative assessment in the springtime. So let me take a moment here to drop the link to the resources in the chat. One moment here. Okay, so that link is in the chat for all of you. And let me get back here now to our presentation. So if you have questions, if you have specific questions about your child's participation in CASP, or questions about your school's testing schedule, their accommodations, please do contact your child's school, because they would be able to provide that specific information. If you have general questions, you can definitely email me, and then I can either direct your question either back to the school or try to research it from the appropriate department if necessary. I will take a moment to look through some of the questions in the Q&A or the chat, and we'll try to answer as many as I can here. One question is the assessment on all subjects or only English language assessment? My student is in 4th grade. So 4th graders will be taking an English language arts assessment and a mathematics assessment for 4th grade. If the student is in a two-way bilingual immersion class or program, they will likely also be taking the California Spanish assessment for that grade level. So let me go back to the chat now and see what questions might be available. So yes, we are recording the session. It will be available to everyone soon. The testing dates for specific schools I do not have. Again, the window is from mid-March to early May. Most schools will begin assessing after spring break, because typically they use that break kind of as a launching point, and then the few weeks between spring break and the end of the window is when most schools will begin. But again, it really is up to each school. It may depend on the number of staff they have available, the number of students that are testing, the number of small groups they may have to create based on accommodations. So best thing to do is contact your school site, to find out when the testing is happening for yourselves or for that particular school. There's a question here about a link to get to check our kids' performance on the test, seeing, so the best way to see your individual student performance would be on the score reports in the parent portal if they have assessed prior years. If you're looking for progress on assessments that have taken place during the school year that might provide an indicator, then that would most likely come from your classroom teacher. Contact the school to see what information they can give you there. Some of those assessments that they take will be in the parent portal. Others teachers may have access to exclusively, so then they can provide you that information there. I can share the slides after the meeting. Yes, we'll do that for sure. How can a student report technical issues that they may face during the test if the test doesn't launch, etc.? The teachers will have a dashboard where they're monitoring for those types of issues, and that was really a key point during the remote teaching years right after or during the pandemic. So teachers will be able to monitor inactivity, progress. If there are technical issues, since they are assessing in the classroom with the teacher, they can notify the teacher right away, and the teacher, our tech, the tech assigned to the school will be able to, should be able to respond to it and correct the issue. If for whatever reason, which has happened before, if the particular issue happens to persist, for a variety of reasons, we can always have the student take the assessment at a different time. Most of the time, however, they are able to troubleshoot the issue. Most times it's the student forgetting their password, but teachers will have all that information to support them in the event that were to occur. Another comment about the technology, the Chromebook not functioning properly. For the assessment, they should be able to provide an alternate device. So definitely communicate that need to your child's school to make sure that they can provide a loaner, perhaps at least for the period of the assessment, just to make sure that there aren't any issues where he or she cannot log in. I'm not sure. During the pandemic, our technology staff were loading the secure test browser on personal devices, but I'm not sure if that's occurring now. So if you do, I would encourage you to reach out to your child's school, ask that specific question, and then they can they can get that response to you prior to the testing window beginning. There's a question about Dreambox and how it correlates to the math portion of the assessment. I can't speak too much about Dreambox. I did work with it when I was at the elementary level for several years. But because of the way Dreambox, it may have changed between then and now. I was last at a school site a couple years ago. Prior to that, the reports that we would generate from Dreambox weren't the type of report that we could make that strong correlation to, at least not on a day-to-day level. There were other assessments, however, that indicated that better. So I would, that may have changed. The Dreambox reports may be, much more detailed and much more precise nowadays. But that would definitely be a question I would suggest you ask your teacher. There's a question about CASP reports and parent portal. You should have access to all the reports that students have taken, previous reports as well. So those should all be archived there. Yes, we are recording the meeting, so you should have access to that soon. There's a question about opting out, how that affects placement for middle school. The CASP is one of the criteria used to determine placement in accelerated math. There are other criteria, however, so opting out of the CASP won't eliminate that unless the student doesn't meet the other criteria that are listed. And the follow-up email that I'll send after the presentation next couple days, I can include a link to the middle school math placement document where you can review that information to see what other criteria are used besides CASP for placement. Let's see if there are any other questions that I haven't yet answered. Question again about results posting on Infinite Campus. They'll be available whenever we receive the reports from the state, which will be late summer or sometime in the early fall. Resources to help the students prepare for the test. The link that I dropped in the chat, and I'll drop it in there again in case anyone missed it or you logged in later on. So there is a link to sample test questions that students can use or that you can explore yourself. The teachers will most likely be using those sample test items or those practice test questions at least partially with students, just to help them become familiar, especially if they've never tested before. So third grade teachers will be doing this heavily. Make sure that they know how to log in, how to find the appropriate test, how to navigate the tools that are provided to them to make sure that they know how to use the line reader, the Zoom, the calculator, when it's provided, etc. There's a question about finding out whether your child will be taking the LPAC assessment. I guess that can apply to any assessment. Yes, definitely contact your school to find out what assessments they're scheduled to take. LPAC has already started at most schools, especially schools with high numbers of English learners. And so I would definitely contact them so that, again, they can inform you of which tests they are being assigned. NWEA test results should be available from the classroom teacher. Those typically aren't sent home, but if you contact your teacher, they should be able to give you at least an overview of how they're performing, and you can have a good idea of how they may perform on the assessment. So there's a question about a particular attendee's chat window not displaying the link. I will email the link as well after we're done. It won't be tonight, but next couple of days when I email the recording, I can email the links that were shared in the chat, as well as the middle school placement guide for math that explains the criteria of a criteria for that, and then also how to I lost my train of thought. The criteria for middle school math placement, and then how CASP might factor into that. There's a question about Infinite Campus access. If you visit our our district website, sjusd.org, and in the search bar type in parent portal, the search feature is really, really good. So one of the first or second results should be the link to the parent portal page, and there you can view the troubleshooting guide as well, the help. So you can either click on forgot password when you're trying to log in, and then you'll be provided the login information needed, but there's also contact information there where you can call or email to get support with troubleshooting the access. Question about whether the assessments happen in the child's home school or do they go to a different school. These all happen in their classroom. So the only reason that a student may not test in their classroom will be if they have a specific accommodation, but it will still happen at the school site. Perhaps it's in a different teacher, with a different teacher, a different group of students. But these all happen with the student's homeroom teacher. To the degree possible. At the high school level, again, depending on scheduling, they may take it with a different teacher, but it will all happen at the school site. There's a question about why can't all parents get their NWEA results automatically instead of asking the math teacher? I would have to communicate or contact our curriculum office to find out more about that. I don't have a specific answer for you, but I can research that and then try to find out. Question also about a high school math placement document. I believe the document that I will link includes middle and high school placement. It's the flow chart and the, if this happens and that happens explanation. So I will share that with everybody, and it should provide the information needed there. Question about the opt-out. The opt-outs, again, they don't factor into grades. They don't factor into promotion to another grade or graduation. If anything, they may impact a placement in accelerated math. If a student is working towards reclassification from an English learner to an English proficient student, or working towards the seal of biliteracy. the CASP scores are one of the criteria that are considered, but there are usually other criteria as well that that can be used. So if the student meets none of the other criteria and CASP is their last chance, so to speak, for eligibility, then opting out, may impact that in a negative manner. However, if they've met one of the other criteria, or more than one of the other criteria, then opting out may not have that same impact. The NWEA test results are usually available. Those are pretty immediate. So after a student assesses, within 24 hours, I think the teacher should have access to those. And so yeah, very soon after the assessment takes place, those should be available. And then a question again about the other criteria. So in the document that I will share in the email for the math placement, it outlines all the criteria used for secondary, middle school, and high school math placement, and how the CASP scores will factor into that. With regard to the if your child is an English learner and how that might impact reclassification or the seal, I will try to find that information and include it. You can also ask your child's, I would probably start with the principal or vice principal if it's a secondary student to find that out. If they're not an English learner, nothing to worry about there. But I'll try to link as much information as I can about that. All right, so questions have slowed down. I don't see any new ones that haven't been addressed, but again, I will send out a follow-up email with the recording and a few resources for all of you. The email will come from our family engagement mailbox, so you can reply to us there if you have a question that we can answer. Again, all the specific questions, definitely contact your child's school, but if you have something general, then I'd be happy to reply back to you. I really appreciate you taking the time to join us. And if there's anything more that we can support with, please feel free to reach out to our office, and we are happy to help. Have a wonderful evening, and we look forward to seeing you at our next event. Thank you again.